Innovation. Taking something existing and transforming it into something extraordinary. The Air Force's inception was built on innovation, has thrived on innovation, and counts on today's innovators to transform the future. No matter how big or small, innovation begins with an idea. Welcome to LIFT, Leaders Inspiring for Tomorrow, developing the innovator in you.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please rise for Colonel Heathman and our guest speakers?
All right, good morning, Team Fairchild. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. We decided to start 30 minutes later this year, all right? That's based on your feedback, all right? How many got burritos this morning? All right, I want to say thank you to the CGOC for stepping up early this morning to cook some food. They're going to have food here throughout the day. If you want some more, please feel free. This is kind of, if you need to get up, use the restroom, things like that, kind of a free flow. We want you to be nice, relaxed, and in that full, just take it all in mode today. So welcome to LIFT. We'll call this 3.0. How many folks have never attended this event? Wow, good. I was hoping as we do these each year, and we do these now on the April Wingman Day, that we get enough iteration here that we get new folks in here. And I appreciate the fact that you're all coming out here this morning. We're going to have a great lineup today. There's three major things that kind of create the recipe for today. First and foremost is the actual LIFT team itself. So if you've had any hand in building what you see here today, leadership, even the smallest thing, if you supported the LIFT event today, could you please stand for a second? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. All right, I want to give the LIFT team a huge hand for everything they've done today. Absolutely cannot do it without them, and there's so much work that goes in behind the scenes, and they make this place just look incredible. We've got an incredible production team from Joint Base Lewis-McChord. This is the second year they've been with us. They're live streaming this, and you'll be able to find all these videos on the DoD's video site, Divid's website, later down the road once they upload everything, and you'll be able to share that content wherever you want. It's all part of the Creative Commons, and we do that on purpose, but we wanted to ramp up our production quality, and we so much appreciate you guys coming back again this year. The second ingredient are, of course, our speakers, okay? Last year, we had the Grateful Eight. We had 8 speakers that we brought in to talk about the topic of leadership. This year, we have the Magnificent Seven. You're like, well, why did we go down to 7? Well, again, based on your feedback and the airman feedback from last year, we're still going to give them 20 minutes to talk, but we're going to do a panel at the end of today. And so you might have gotten note cards. If you didn't get any during one of the breaks, you can go get a note card. If you got questions that come up during this, write them on the note card and then take them in the back, and we're going to be collecting those, and we're going to have a moderated speaker panel at the end of today, probably around 11 o'clock. It'll be about a 40-minute panel. General Holt's going to moderate that with our speakers, and I think it's going to be slightly entertaining, okay? So I hope you guys come up with some good questions, and they'll flow with that, like I said, towards the end of the day. We'll make that, we'll kind of make that our final event. So, and the third ingredient for this recipe, of course, is you. This event is designed by airmen, powered by airmen. And without you, without your curiosity, without your willingness to want to take in some content that probably isn't anything you would normally find in your military environment, you're saying not only to yourself but to others, hey, there's something to be learned here. And all that I ask is that you continue to maintain this sense of curiosity, because what we're trying to tackle today is the idea and culture of innovation. We have all heard this word, innovate. Hey, airmen, go innovate. I will tell you, I struggle at times with understanding what does that mean. Because there are days, I just want the printer to work, right? I don't need an innovative solution, but there are some times when that process to get from broke to fixed, we have to look at that stream of events. What happens? I put in a work order that goes into a computer, that goes into an airman's hands, it gets queued. There's all these steps that we don't think about that sometimes maybe we do need to look at these processes. So I'm not inventing a light bulb, I'm maybe trying to make life a little bit easier for myself or from a process owner standpoint for somebody else on this base. Maybe there is something that needs to be invented, and you're sitting here now that have the next widget, and you're holding it to yourself because you're being really selfish about it, right? I need you to come out, okay, come out into the light and start sharing those ideas with your leadership. Because the one thing that I can promise you is your wing leadership, your group leadership, your squadron leadership, they support you in this, because we talk about this. We want you to have a space in a venue, in a base that you can come to, be stationed at, and then when you depart here, feel like, you know what, my ideas were heard, okay? We also have some funding too. I would never be afraid to ask for money, right? We do get the N-O word a lot, right? No. But sometimes you need to defend your idea, and that takes coaching. And that's what some of these speakers here are here to do for you too, to inspire that. And some of them are going to talk about events that they have in the community of Spokane that you can go to for free. Some of them, they even feed you, okay? So I would take advantage of that. And they'll coach you through how to come up with an idea, how to look at a problem, how to go after venture capital, how to start a small business. Maybe that's something that you're interested in on the side or something that you may want to do 5, 10 years down the road. Some of you are going to be transitioning soon. If these things are interesting to you, I want you to take advantage of what the community of Spokane has to offer. And there's a lot. And like I said, you'll hear some of that today. So I want you to buckle up. I want you to settle in. I want you to have a good time. You're allowed to laugh. You're allowed to cheer. Take lots of notes in your program. You're going to have a notes page for every speaker that we have here today. And then you also have access to their LinkedIn accounts and their Twitter handles. So if you want to keep that dialogue and that communication with them, they're allowing that to happen. And I tell you, having seen the speakers last night kind of interact at our social, I mean, the synapses that were firing in their brains were firing at such a rate, it was hard to keep up with them. Because there were so many different ways that they were all connected. And I'm hoping that an event like this for you does that same thing. So thank you for being here. If your friends didn't make it, go ahead and take out your phone and text them and tell them to get over here. We have some seats available for them. But like I said, come and go as you please, and we hope you really enjoy today's program, all right? Thank you for being here, and have a wonderful Wingman Day, all right? Take care.
Thank you, Colonel Heathman. Hey, before we get started, I have one question. Speaking of innovation, can anybody tell me where you're going to find a good farmer? Outstanding in his field. I had to give that to one of our speakers, so I wanted to bring that up. Thank you. All right, Team Fairchild, welcome to Fairchild's 3rd annual Leaders Inspiring for Tomorrow's event. I'm your host, Master Sergeant Casey Hearn of the 92nd Maintenance Squadron. Shout out. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Before we get started, I'd like to lay out our sequence of events for today. We have 7 fantastic speakers for your enjoyment. We will have 3 breaks throughout the day, which will be 10 minutes in each in length. During that time, feel free to purchase food in the back, use the restroom, and please mingle with your fellow airmen and do some networking. But please be in your seat a couple minutes prior so we don't have to wait on you. At the end of the 3rd break, we're going to have a raffle. We got 3 big bundles of books down here and keys to a Ford still in my hand, so we'll be doing that as well. So keep your numbers handy, you might be called out. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. He is a retired Air Force Brigadier General, General Holt. Prior to joining Brady, he built his leadership foundation in the military, where he advanced from instructor pilot in airlift aircraft to the 2nd highest ranking United States military official at NATO. He has earned multiple awards and honors for effectively managing major crises across Europe and Asia. General Holt will inspire you to take chances, be bold, and break free of the bureaucracy that stifles the creative, innovative spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, please help welcome me, General Holt.
Thanks. How are we doing on sound? We can hear me. Okay, great. The other thing I want to proudly proclaim is I am a Fairchildren. I am Fairchild alumni. And so thanks for bringing me back. I want to thank Colonel Scott Heathman, who is got the job that I used to have here that I loved. And the funny part about that was I got here after 6 one-year assignments in a row. And they said, don't worry. Where's any Air Force Personnel Center types here? Where dreams go to die? And they said, don't worry, Fairchild's a stability tour for you. You're going to be there 2 to 3 years, right? Which is code words for you're not in the running for a wing, right? So that's okay. And then 10 months later, we had my going away party. And I went off to a big deal, okay? And it kind of changed my life, and I'll talk about that in a second. So I want to start out with, let me see if this works. Boom. And it doesn't. And it does now. This is where I want to start. I want to set the table. You got great speakers today, far better than me, but I get to be here anyway because I'm alumni. I want to bring to you can be disruptive if you're an airman. It's okay. I survived, and you can too. But it's a very dangerous path, and you have to decide whether you want to take that path or not. And we'll get to what that means. So let's start with a war story. And I'm going to start with a Fairchild war story because I think it illustrates the point. So the first thing I want you to know about is about a public-private joint interagency task force that forever in my career I have called the Department of No. Does anybody have any interaction with the Department of No? Nobody? Wow. Okay, let's be interactive. I'm going to be interactive, you be interactive, because what I have here is a laser beam, and I can point it at you and bring you up here with me. And I'm not above doing that, by the way. Those who know me know I'm a little guano crazy, and so that's exactly what I'll do. All right, the Department of No is where a disruptor, a well-meaning disruptor who was trying to fix something, let's say the water cooler's putting out bad water, not the big idea, but something, and we're going to go fix it. And then the Department of No gives you 18,000 reasons why you can't do that. It's not legal. You can't contract that way. We would have to put that on the POM budget for next year. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. People bring in these plastic bottles of water anyway, and why would you want to do that? Now get out of here. All right. So, fully disclosed, I have a Native American background, despite my blonde hair, because there's a Canadian in there somewhere. And so I want to translate a little Cherokee Indian for you. It turns out that the word vice wing commander in Cherokee Indian translates to everything the wing commander doesn't want to do. And so I'm working third shift, right, at the ORI. The nuclear RI. We're getting ready. It's dress rehearsal. The team's coming next week. It's going to be a big deal. And I'm going to get through this pretty damn quick. We get to I'm leaving the command post. I'm going to go check on the mobility line because that's a big deal to generate forces and get them out of here. And I want to see how they're going to be doing right before we bring in everybody and start the line. And I get in there and I see an airman first class, and that's all. That's the only person who's there. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. Just me and him. And he's never met me, and I've never met him. And I asked him, so how are things going? Are we ready for the folks to come through? And he said, yes, sir, we are, but I'm a little worried. And I said, why? He goes, I just think that this configuration is really slow, and I don't think we're going to process people very fast here. I said, well, what would you do? And he goes, well, actually, what I've been thinking about is I would do double lines here, and then I would re-wicker the building this way, and I would take it this way, and we could run 2 chocks through at the exact same time as we were doing one. And I said, so we're having a talk about queue theory. Awesome. Okay, well, let's do it your way. Let's do this tonight as our control, and then tomorrow night when we do it again, we're going to do it your way. And so you set it all up just the way you want to do it, and we'll alert both chocks at the exact same time. We're going to run through. Okay, awesome. And so I get back. Now I know the trap is set because I did this intentionally. Because I know the Department of No is going to find out about this. All right? So what ends up happening is, long story short, I get back the next night, and I see nothing's changed in the room. I see the airmen there, but I see a few other figures standing around, checking their watches, clipboard. Got a tech sergeant over here, got a senior master sergeant over here, I got a captain in the corner over here. I'm going, whoa, what happened? Where's the double lines? I thought we were going to do this other thing. And then the airman comes up to me and he says, well, I thought about it. And honestly, the way we're doing it is the best way. I said, whoa, you have a gun to your head and we can't tell. So I said, you know what, that's great, but thank you for your innovative spirit, and I'm going to give you the night off. And they all look at me like I just killed their kitten, right? I don't have enough people. The airman does all the work. We stand around. Now who's going to do the work? And so what happens is I bring in the crowd and I go, shame on all of you. Shame on all of you, because we probably are not going to retain that airman now. And what you told him is that failure or the chance to fail won't be accepted here. And we can't get better, and we won't know if that idea will ever work. And even if it failed, all we're going to do is put another stripe on him and say, thanks for being a thinker. And now this one says, they say they want to empower you and embolden you, but the Department of No doesn't mean that, right? So leaders, I know some of you are going, I've done that. I've killed that kitty. Think about it, okay? No judgment, but that's a Fairchild truism. That's what happened here. I'm sure it doesn't happen now. All right. So disrupt, okay? You got to have your heart in this thing, okay? This is the real deal. There are threats in your world if you want to be a disruptor, but big things can happen in your life. So the first question you got to ask yourself is, do you care? Is this something I care about, right? Are you passionate about it? Some of you, believe it or not, are airmen who believe this is not an adventure, it really is a job, and I'm getting out soon. And I don't care. I mean, I care enough to be professional. I'll follow the 3 core values, I'll do my work, and then I'll get out and I'll go on, and it'll be a great experience. That's fine. No problem. No admonishment. If you serve 1 hour in your country's uniform, you have my salute forever. Okay? But find what you do care about. Because that's where this disruption path could take you. If you care about it, you'll do stuff about it. And we'll talk about that. How am I doing? I'm going good. All right. All right. Can you make disruption and innovation and creativity a process? Yeah, you can. Doesn't have to be that way. Doesn't have to be that way. But think about this. Let's talk about someone who's naturally gifted, naturally creative, $1 million ideas come into his head all the time. He monetizes them and goes on. You know him as Sting. And he had a 10-year drought of not writing a word. I mean, writer's block extraordinaire. Now, good news is he already had $100 million in the bank, right? So he's covered for 10 years of no ideas. But a process might be helpful, especially if you care about what you're working on. It's complicated. And this clicker is no good. All right. Try again. There we go. Okay. I think most of the process is involved in preparation. You don't know what's coming your way in terms of that crappy water cooler or the line that you want to work on. So a routine, a ritual that I would recommend in your life if you want to hone your skills as an innovator and a creative person is, first off, handle your noise. I didn't do that so well for the first 3 quarters of my career. Handle the noise. We all have noise in our minds at all times. You've got computers, inputs, people coming to you, jobs to fill, kids to take care of, all this stuff in your life. Some's good noise and some's bad noise, right? So take some time for mindfulness. If you think that you, right now, could stop everything and close your eyes and make your mind silent and not have a thought for 1 minute, if you think you could go that long, raise your hand. Okay, that's good. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. You're good. It's a muscle. You build it. It's called mindfulness. You have to find a way to tune out. I don't care how you meditate. You want to get on a yoga mat. You want to have a little app in your iPhone that helps guide you through something. But get a way to tune out noise for a little bit. It will make you strong and clear on a lot of things. Read addictively. I put some books up here for you. You can do whatever you want. But there's and then that follows into writing. Journal. Write yourself. Publish. Do whatever. Write about what you care about. Because this journaling will actually take you to what you really give a crap about. Okay? Then trying on new clothes. If you don't care about this, well, think about what role you would play, and then go meet people who do that, and hang around them for a little bit, and find out if that's what you want. And then heroes and villains in your life. I am certain that a couple of you might have had a commander that you felt was a little deficient at some skills. I'm certain of it, right? We have good, bad, and ugly in our lives all the time, and guess what? On the civilian side, no different, right? So you can learn as much from them as you can from heroes, and that's what I really want to hone in on is the positive aspects of this. Today, you get to be around a bunch of thought leaders. Absorb and continue looking at thought leaders who can help you. So those questions I put up behind me are questions for you to always think about, all right? All right, I'm going to give you a war story. I have time. The Bishkek, I went out of here at Fairchild as the vice wing commander, and I'm on my way to Bishkek because I get there to a basket case. And here's what happens. A month before my wing command starts at Manas, the corrupt regime is going to evict the United States. That's one factor. Two factors. General McChrystal and General Petraeus get with me, and they say, here's the deal. Not only are you going to have to hold that ground and keep that base there, we need you to triple the capacity of it because the president has just approved the surge. Okay? And I show up to a base that people outside the gate actually hate Americans because we're propping up a corrupt regime, and yes, that's what we're doing. So the money wasn't flowing down to the people, is I guess what I'm saying. And so I had to go native, assess the situation, really delegate out the mission to our folks, and lever anybody's creativity. So I can't be the answer guy. I've got to go find lots of answer guys and gals. So we go native. We learn Kyrgyz. We get in the schools. We attend things downtown. We empower women's programs. We get into entrepreneurship. A whole cocktail to distance ourselves from what I know is coming. A bloody, violent revolution on the other side of the year, and all those relationships that we invested in came to fruition. And Rosa Otunbayeva, the new interim president after the massacre, made an announcement that we would be staying. And we took care. This wing took care of 98% of the mobility requirements for General McChrystal's surge because the Fairchild was the main force provider, right? We had to save the country, and we had to save a bunch of Peace Corps volunteers, and we did all that on the backs of relationships that we developed and a heck of a lot of innovation. So I asked General Petraeus to stay another year because I loved it there. This is the transformative year of my life, and I loved it there, and he said, you know what, Blaine, you've gone native. And I can't have you there. I mean, you're wearing robes, you built a yurt. Some of you actually may have seen that yurt. But we did a lot of cool things, and it was a lot of fun. We put the mobility mission back on track. Now, the next one for me, and this leads up to what my wish is for you, the next one for me is what I'm doing right now. So I finished up my military career, and I run a little company called Millionaire for a couple of years to kind of have a pretty sobering MBA experience and convert my skills into tractable business skills. And then I get my big opportunity. A really great, through a mentor, a really great entrepreneur who's built 3 metals companies comes to me and says, what I'd like to do is I want to be a part of the restoration of Appalachia, and I want to do it this way. We want to build the first aluminum rolling mill in 40 years. We have nanocrystalline powder metallurgy in all the other alloy categories spun out of MIT that are going to change the world of material science and change aerospace, transportation, every single thing we do, okay? And we're going to build this in the heart of Appalachia, where for 30 years they've been in nothing but decline and recession and the loss of 3 major industries. And I can tell you they are as resilient a people as you have ever met in your life. They never say die, and they always come forward with innovative ways to kind of keep it together. This community has the #1 factor that I would want in anybody that I hire: resilience. They never quit, even if they don't know what they're doing. And if they do know what they're doing, it doesn't matter because they're never going to quit. These are people with amazing values. And so the bones of the city are good, and it's got a great history, and we're going to rebuild it, but we're going to do it with this massive company that's going to lightweight everything you drive, fly, in boats, whatever. Okay, that sounds like a great opportunity. We're going to hire a 3rd veteran, so we're going to put our arms around that one as well. And then we'll just keep on disrupting. The speakers that you're going to hear from today, last night was really a treasure for me because every single one of them is working on something that we're doing in Appalachia, right? And I want to lever that. I want to get into that and bring that home with me. And so it was really sparking off a lot of ideas because on the social mission side, we're going to get at opioid epidemic. We're going to get at the obesity epidemic, health and wellness. We're going to get at the revitalization of the community and the town and embracing its former values and lifting it up and bringing it back. Okay? And for me, from my Bishkek experience, the reason I told you the 2 war stories is, hey, that's a nice spiral. I remember the development work I did in Bishkek. It changed who I was. And this does the same thing. But I want to take you back to the process, because the process matters. I don't get to be that guy in Kyrgyzstan. I don't get to have this opportunity now unless I'm a habitual reader, unless I'm always trying to look at what's out there. And these are great forums and great ways to do that. Okay? And so preparation, I didn't know Kyrgyzstan was going to fall in my lap, right? It was a 3-year tour at Fairchild. Kaboom. The fixer goes in. And everybody was like, well, that's going to be the shortest wing command in history. 2 days. And so we stayed. It's the process that matters. You can do that. But you have to answer that first question. You have to go, do I care? It's a binary answer. It's yes or no. It's not I kind of care. And if it's no, it's okay. Disconnect. Don't take that next enlistment. Don't do that next thing. Okay? But what I think you'll find, if you can remain positive and you're passionate about your work, you will find so many ways to go, you know what we could do, ... So what's the culture here? What could we do? And leaders, embrace those things. Even if you have enough experience to know what your young one is going to do is going to result in failure. Create a bubble. Let the car accident happen. And then chalkboard it, right? But the bigger message that you'll be sending your people is, I will let you disrupt. I will encourage your thinking and new ideas, okay? I don't agree with the Department of No. I remember when we started this innovation thing 4 years in the Air Force, and the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force said, we've got 11,000 ideas that we got in our innovation programs. How many did you implement? Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. Okay? Every one of you can contribute in any way, shape, or form. Even if you know you're getting out of the Air Force. Good gosh, what a great place to work on innovation and trying new things and a perspective about what you would do in a great, safe environment. What's the worst that can happen? Nothing, right? My sadness that night at Fairchild's Logistic Readiness Center was, we're going to lose that airman. Because we broke faith with that airman. We busted our promise with that one. That's unfortunate. Okay? But every day we can re-recruit folks here. So here, before I turn this over, here is my wish for you. My wish for you is that at least 1 or 2 times in your life, this comes from your preparation, a situation or a moment calls on you to draw on nearly everything that you have ever learned, that you are tested in this moment, and that you gain all of the wisdom and peace that comes from successfully pushing through. I'm in one of those moments right now. I don't know how it'll end. I don't care. Quite honestly, it's the journey that's the most important thing. I know we'll be successful. I know we'll get this done. Okay? But my care is about what are we doing right now? And in Bishkek, it was another one of those times that tried every single thing that I've ever learned, from languages to, dealing with folks and other cultures and that type of thing. I wish that for you, because that's what your preparation will yield to you in terms of rewards. So I want you to enjoy the speakers today. Just like I told you, they are going to be far better than this kickoff. And we're going to bring Kevin Sanders out here, who's going to talk to you about a lot of the exciting things that he's doing. And I'll leave you with disrupting yourself routinely and preparing will empower you. It'll empower your wing and your teams. And you might just find you're staying in our Air Force for a real long time. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you, General Holt, for inspiring words. Hey, so I was coming into work today, and I seen on a big marquee that Snoop Dogg is coming to town. Did anybody else see that out there? Raise your hand. You saw that? You saw it? Colonel, you saw that? So the next question is, do you know why he uses an umbrella? For drizzle. All right. Last joke, I promise. I won't tell anymore. I'll stick to my J job. Thanks again, General, for that. That was pretty good, though, right? I just left it on my phone. So our next speaker has over 25 years building global brands, including senior-level roles at Kellogg's, the Coleman Company, Timberland, and others. He consults with and trains organizations on building trust with today's skeptical buyers using his proprietary triggering trust framework. Mr. Sanders also teaches MBA students as an professor at Gonzaga University. Mr. Sanders will help you find the necessary component to enable a culture of innovation. That key component is trust. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Kevin Sanders.
Good morning, everybody. You guys are in for a real treat today. There's going to be a lot of great speakers. They're going to come out here and they're going to tell you an awful lot about innovation, because they're experts in innovation. Well, I'm not an expert in innovation. But what I do know a little bit about is about this idea of trust. And so we're going to talk a little bit about trust today and the role that trust plays in innovation. Because a culture of innovation is a culture of trust. So in order to have a culture of innovation, you have to start with an innovation, with a culture of trust. Because trust rarely happens, or innovation rarely happens in a vacuum, right? The best ideas come from the collective wisdom and effort of the team. And so innovation requires teamwork. And teamwork requires cooperation. And cooperation requires trust. So I'm going to talk about trust today because trust is the foundation of human relationships. And it's arguably the key to success in business today. And it's arguably the key to success in both our professional lives and our personal lives. I mean, it's hard to even find an article on leadership or teamwork or corporate culture or innovation that doesn't talk about the importance of trust. And the reason it's so important is because if people don't trust, they don't act. If people don't trust, they don't act. So if you want them to act, to embrace your ideas, to support your projects or your causes, or to collaborate with you on innovation, you need them to trust you, right? Trust is one of those things that we all recognize is really important. And the better you are at building trust, the more effective you'll be. It's as simple as that. And so in the time that I have here today, I want to help you get better at it. I want to help you understand how trust works so that you can become more trusted in the relationships that matter most to you. Now, see, we know that trust is important, yet we often struggle with how to do it, how to understand how to do it better. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is that we really don't understand what trust is or how it works. And the other thing is that we're not very good at being intentional about it, of getting our clicker to work here really well. We're not very good at being really intentional about how we build trust because, again, we don't really understand how it works. So I'm going to try to help you with that today. I mean, trust is a really complex topic, and it's like getting up here and saying you got 20 minutes to explain medicine to people. But I'm going to try to do my best to offer you a little crash course on how trust works. Just basically the core principles of how this works so that you can leave here today with a better understanding of how to build trusting relationships with others. And then hopefully, as you listen to the other speakers today talk about innovation and talk about how to do innovation, the process, and how to do more of it, that you understand that the foundation of all of that is a team or an organization that trusts each other. So let's talk a little bit about really how trust works. One of the biggest misconceptions that we have about trust is that we think it's a single thing, but it's not. Trust actually has two parts, a yin and a yang, if you will. And those two parts work together, but they also operate very differently. And so the first side of trust, and by competence we mean, are you capable? Do I believe that you can do what you claim? And are you dependable? Do you have a history of fulfilling commitments? Do you deliver on your promises? The other side of trust is sincerity. And by sincerity, we mean, are you honest? Do I believe that you will be truthful with me? And are you fair? Do I believe that you will act in good faith and consider my needs in addition to your own? So another way to think about this is that competence judges someone's actions, their performance, while sincerity judges their intentions, their motives. In order to understand the relationship between competence and sincerity, we need to understand the relationship between gains and losses. See, when we enter into a relationship with someone, it's because we expect to receive some sort of beneficial outcome from that relationship, right? That outcome may be short-term, may be long-term, it may be small, it may be large. We're getting involved with that person because we want to end up better off than where we started somehow. What that person offers us is the potential for gain. What that relationship offers us is the potential for gain, and we want that gain. But all relationships also come with risk, right? And trust and risk go hand in hand. Because if there were no risk, if there were nothing at stake, then we wouldn't need to trust. But the reason there is risk, and the reason that we do need to trust, is because that outcome that we want is dependent on the actions of others. And we can never be completely sure how that other person is going to act, right? And so there's a potential that we won't receive that gain. There's a potential that that won't work out for us in a way that provides us that beneficial outcome. But there's also the possibility that things will end up much worse than that, right? See, whenever you create a dependency, you also create a vulnerability. And so it's possible that that other person will exploit that vulnerability, that they'll take advantage of us for their gain, which would result in our loss. We don't want to get into this relationship to turn out worse off than we are, right? We want to achieve that gain. And so there's always the potential that we'll receive a loss from that. So when we go into relationships with other people, it's because we want to achieve a gain and avoid a loss. Remember that. We want to achieve a gain and avoid a loss. And to understand whether we believe that person is trustworthy or not, we need to assess the likelihood that trusting them will result in that gain and avoid that loss. And we do that through a process of trying to predict their competence and their sincerity. See, competence predicts my potential for gain. If I trust your competence, I expect that you will deliver on your promises, that you will provide me with that benefit that I'm looking for. If we agree that you will pick me up at the airport at 6 o'clock when my flight arrives, If I trust your competence, I have confidence that you'll be there to pick me up, right? And so competence reflects my confidence in your performance. We predict or try to assess your sincerity, on the other hand, to predict our potential for loss. Because again, we can never be quite sure what the other person is going to do. But if I trust their sincerity, I trust that they will safeguard my interests. I trust that they are interested in that mutually beneficial outcome where we both receive a gain. That's what fairness is, right? I trust that they care about how I end up. Now, the challenge with assessing people's competence and people's sincerity is if we think about competence as the ceiling, right, and sincerity being the floor, the challenge that we have with that is that those two things are not equal. It is often much more difficult or much more easy to judge someone's competence than it is to assess their sincerity, right? Their competence is above the waterline, right? Because it's based on your performance, and it's usually easy for something for me to be able to see, like it's visible, or it's tangible, it's knowable in some way. You were either there at 6 o'clock or you weren't. But it's much harder to judge someone's sincerity. Again, because it's based on their intentions, it's based on their motives, and we can never be quite sure what those motives are. And so ultimately, in order to be trustworthy, you need both sides. You need to be competent in your actions and sincere in your intentions. Let me ask you this. Which side is more important? Well, let me ask it in a slightly different way then. Who would you rather deal with? Someone who is honest but incompetent, or someone who is competent but dishonest? Yeah, neither choice is a great one, by the way, right? But if we had to choose, most of us would choose A, right? Who here works with a lot of people that are honest but incompetent, right? And most people would prefer A, right? People who are honest but incompetent if they had to choose. Now, some relationships are more driven by or more determined by competence, right? And other relationships are more driven by sincerity. And so there's a little bit of context here. But all things being equal, sincerity is more important. It's actually much more important. There's a number of reasons for this, but one of the biggest ones is that we don't weigh gains and losses equally. We actually fear losing more than we value winning. We fear losing more than we value winning. It's a concept called loss aversion. It was first proposed by the cognitive psychologist Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Anybody read Thinking Fast and Slow? Yeah, that's Kahneman. He actually won a Nobel Prize for his work in this area. And what loss aversion basically says is that it is more psychologically painful for us, for example, to lose $5 than it is psychologically pleasurable for us to win $5. And that's because, again, we don't weigh gains and losses equally. And as a result, we don't weigh competence and sincerity equally. We weigh sincerity more heavily than we do competence. But how do we often build relationships? We lead with competence, right? We're really good at the competence part. We're really good at demonstrating how competent we are. But as we just discussed, the sincerity side of trust is actually more important. Competence is important because it reflects our ability to get that gain we want, right? but sincerity is what protects our floor. And at the end of the day, your competence doesn't matter if people doubt your sincerity. If there's any chance that you will exploit my vulnerabilities, if there's any chance that I will actually end up worse off by trusting you, I'm not going to trust you. So it doesn't really matter how well you were going to perform, because we weren't going to get there. And so what I want to leave you guys with is a couple more ideas about how to implement this idea. And the first one is that we need to do a better job of revealing our sincerity. We need to do a better job of making it easy for people to see below the surface, to understand what our intentions are. We need to make it easier for people to protect their floor. Now, I'm not up here saying that you should not talk about how competent you are, right? That's still important. But oftentimes when we're trying to build relationships, we start with competence and we focus on competence and then we stop. We never get to that part where we talk about sincerity. We tend to ignore that. That's the soft stuff. That's not fun. We don't want to talk about that stuff. But I hope you leave here today with an understanding of that's actually the most important part. And you can look at, as a society, why we don't trust as much as we used to. And it's not because that we've become less competent. It's because we've become less good at talking about how sincere we are. We want people to know that they're safe with us. That, of course, assumes that you are sincere, right? You got to give it to the guy, right? I mean, he had an uphill battle. He lost, by the way. Bad. He lost bad. So I'm not up here suggesting that we create opportunities for us to look sincere. I'm telling you that we need to do a better job of convincing people that we are sincere. So I tell my clients all the time that, I'm not here to make you more sincere. I'm here to help you get credit for being sincere. And the last one I want to talk about is this idea of embrace, don't erase. See, oftentimes when there's a breakdown, when there's a failure, it happens on the competence side, right? It happens because there was a failure in our performance. You weren't there at 6 o'clock to pick me up. But then how do we respond to that? Oftentimes we try to cover it up or deny it, right? Or make excuses. And that takes a breakdown in competence and turns it into a breakdown of sincerity. And we consider failures of sincerity to be much more egregious than failures in competence. So I tell people all the time, one of the best ways to build trust is to screw up and then use that as an opportunity to reveal your sincerity. To let people see below the surface, to let them understand that you do care about their outcome, that you do care about how they end up, and that you'll do what you need to make the situation right. And we will screw up, right? We always screw up. But it's a real opportunity for you. When you have that moment, when you realize that you've screwed up, you have a moment there to decide how you're going to react to that. And so knowing a little bit about what you know now today, my hope is that you'll take that moment and you'll use that as the opportunity it is to help that person understand that you are actually sincere. So if we want this culture of innovation, and again, the people today are going to talk a lot about how to do that. But if we want that culture of innovation, if we want the opportunity for the teams to get together and to come up with those breakthrough ideas, then we need to start with that foundation of trust. And we need to look at that idea of trust not just in proving how competent we are, But again, focusing on the idea of being sincere and communicating to people that they are safe with us. Because innovation requires the creativity. And that creativity needs that safety, that safe environment. We need to know that ideas are safe and that it's okay to fail, as the general said. And we get there by demonstrating that we are sincere, that we are honest, and that we are fair in how we're doing this. And so to get that innovation, that culture of innovation, I want you to think about how trust becomes the fertile soil from which that culture of innovation can take root and grow. And now that you know a little bit about how trust works, think about the role that you can play in trying to create innovative environments by managing how well you are competent and how well you're communicating and demonstrating that you are sincere. Thank you guys for your time today. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. So it's that time for that 10-minute break. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is a C-level lead with experience in marketing, manufacturing, and sales, and new product development across 20-plus industries. He has spent over 30 years He has over 30 years practice applying the principles of lean thinking to companies, large and small, across the country. Mr. Wood will speak about different approaches to everyday problems in the workplace, a necessary step towards innovation. Please offer a warm welcome for Mr. Chris Wood.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here this morning with you all and to talk about innovation and what that means. You know, it sounds like I've done a lot of things in my career, and I have been very fortunate to have done that, but I started out as just a farm boy south of here, broke everything on the farm, so engineering was easy. So we're going to dive into talking about ideas, innovation, invention, technology, and I'll start off with some definitions. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page. And so, you know, lots of us have ideas in our work, want to make improvements, want to be innovative. So the first thing I'd like to do is define these three elements: innovation, invention, and technology. So innovation is really about improving or making substantial changes to a process, a product, or a service. Pretty basic, simple, straight line definition. And then there is a difference between invention and innovation. If we go back to Alexander Graham Bell, he invented the telephone. That was something totally brand new. And so invention is focused on creating something brand new. And then we had Thomas Edison. He's known for a lot of inventions. And one of those were the record player, the phonograph. And that was about 150 years ago when all that happened. There's been a lot of innovation through the years with the telephone, the phonograph, and stuff like that. And so what do we have today? What has that innovation led us to? It's, you know, a cell phone, right? It has music, it has everything. And so we have to remember it's an endless journey of continually improving, making better, and learning. And the third element is we want to talk about what technology is. And technology is really defined as scientific method, applying it in most typically an industrial application, using engineering and applied science skills. It was first documented, the term high-tech, in about 1958, and they were talking about nuclear energy at that time. and called it high tech. Well, quickly in the computer industry, that is very high tech also, and because a semiconductor plant, is a multi-billion-dollar facility, and there's an enormous amount of science, material science, chemistry, engineering, all those things make up high tech. Well, also flying an aircraft, there's a lot of science to keeping that thing up in the air too. So you guys are all in a high tech position. So those are the three things we would start with, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And technology is really about scientific method, scientific discovery. So as we move forward with this discussion of innovation, we can look at it a couple different ways. We can be internal to our work that we're doing with our team, and I usually like to think of that as continuous improvement of our work and internal focused in areas that I have influence and maybe some control over. And then also, it can be external focus. So I spend a lot of time in Spokane working with startups and at the various universities in the region. And often everybody comes with an idea to go sell somebody, right? And that's a very external focused, and that's the whole startup ideas and things like that. So we have kind of those two different spaces. But part of that whole process is whether I'm selling my idea to a consumer outside or to my team inside, it's about change management. And we're going to talk about some of those elements today. And it's continuous. It's a long-term continuous improvement type effort. When we're internally looking at it, it's about bringing our whole group along on the journey, just not ourselves. We can think a lot of, hey, I have this idea, like the General Holt talked about, the airmen in the middle of the night, we can move this, do this, this, this. But if we don't pull in our crew and our team and get on board, they're not going to come with us, and it just limits our innovation. And so those are some of the first key steps we need to look forward to. So I have a little roadmap we're going to talk about today, about the journey and some basic principles, good guidelines about 10 little steps to creating innovation in our environment. So those 10 steps, they're pretty quick and easy to remember, and we'll start going through what those are. And the first one is I like to think about, and this one has really been emphasized over the last 5 or 6 years as I've really spent more time with startups. Don't put the cart before the horse. Somebody has the idea for that new, better mousetrap. And usually it's driven by some technology that they've learned. It becomes like, if I have a hammer and I know how to use the hammer, everything becomes the nail. It becomes the familiarity of the instrument is what I want to use. And I was down working at University of Idaho with a startup boot camp. It was a week-long event. There was a couple of the students, two women that had a startup idea, and they were very excited because one of them's boyfriend was in engineering school and had access to a 3D printer. And their problem they were trying to solve is they said, makeup brushes are very expensive, they're hard to clean, and we want to do something for cleaning our makeup brushes. And I'm going, that's great. And they go, we're so excited because we're going to 3D print this cleaner. And they were, talking about all this 3D printing stuff. And I said, you know what we can do? In the next 10 minutes, we can get in the car, drive down to Walmart, and for under $30 buy an ultrasonic cleaner. We can go put your brushes in there and validate the concept. So we don't have to wait for weeks of computer-aided design and figuring out the printing and then what's the motor and the wiring. We can go take something today off the shelf and validate our idea. So that's what we want to remember. Don't put like some technology in front or some solution or some, let's just go try the idea. Make sure we're not putting the cause and the effect in the wrong order. So that's the first principle. Now, the second one is we need to stop and say, what job are we really trying to do? And a Harvard professor, Clayton Christensen, likes to call it the job to be done. And there was a national fast food company that said, we want to make a better milkshake. We're going to put our best food scientists on it. We're going to use the best food science. We're going to get the best ingredients. We're going to run all these consumer tests. We're going to look at, what it really takes to move the needle and sell more milkshakes. And they ran those studies. They did their work, and the needle did not move. They said, oops, what's going on here? And they said, we need to take a minute and look closer at this. So they started asking questions. They brought in a person with some fresh eyes, and he says, well, tell me about the customer. And they said, well, milkshake's a treat. It's usually served, in the evenings and with a meal. And he said, well, show me the data. And they started looking at the data, and they found it wasn't something that people were sitting down and drinking. It was through the drive-thru, most of the sales. The second part of that was most of the sales were before 9 a.m. And they're like, what? 9 a.m.? What's going on? We need to roll up the sleeves. So they start talking to the people coming through. They found out 90% of those people had a commute longer than an hour. So what's the job to be done? They wanted a breakfast supplement that wasn't messy, didn't get crumbs, didn't spill, they could sip on for an hour, wouldn't be gone right away, and they had some protein enough filling that they wouldn't be hungry by 11. So the job to be done was a breakfast drink, not this treat. So they'd missed the job to be done. And so that's what we need to find out. As we think, most of the time we think we know what people want, and we think they know how they're going to use our product, but 99% of the time, that's not the way they're really using it. So we need to understand the job to be done. Then we need to, as we dive into that, we need to step back and look at the big picture. This is so often a problem. We don't grasp the materials, the methods, the machinery, and the team members needed to get the task done. And we don't go flow the whole process. I was in a situation in a titanium mill. They were cutting ingots of titanium. They were way behind schedule and capacity. They couldn't get enough out. So they were going to spend $20 million on a new chemical pickling line to clean the scale and everything off the titanium before they rolled it and cleaned it up. And they flame cut these ingots. And when they flame cut these ingots, they had to go in and hand grind to take all the stress relief off that edge of that metal. Because if they heated up the metal and put it in the forge, those micro cracks would go right into the rest of the metal. So they had this very laborious process, all the stress relief, grinding, into the pickling line. And I said, what happens if we cut it differently? Let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Where is the problem really? It was how they were cutting it. They could cut it. I said, how many do you need to cut a day? They said, about one a day. And it takes about 90 days to get that piece through the plant. And they needed to go through the chemical line. I said, how long does it take to cut one with the torch? Oh, about 15 minutes. How long would I take it to cut it with a bandsaw? They said a day. I said, how much does that bandsaw cost? $1 million. And could you go put it in the furnace right away? Yeah. I said, well, I'd rather spend $1 million and take a day to cut it than $20 million in 90 days on the new pickling line. So we had to step back and look at the big picture and look at what's happening along the whole process and the pathway. So also, now as we move into how we work, we get too comfortable and too compliant, and we're just told the way things are done, right? Our biggest competitor becomes status quo. So many of the external startups always tell me, we don't have any competitors. We have the greatest little thing. We have no competitors. And one was a startup I was working with here in Spokane. they'd been students at Whitworth, and after their freshman year, they could move off campus, and they didn't like the off-campus housing situation. They said, we need more transparency with the landlords. We need to create a system. I said, well, who's going to pay for that service? They said, oh, we'll have the landlords advertise on this, and then they can list their property. And I said, and then what do the students do? Well, they'll rate them like, what's that rating service? Yelp, right? And I'm going, really? You're going to get them to pay for advertising and get bashed by students on your site? And our biggest competitor, how does that landlord advertise today? He puts a 75-cent sign out from the hardware store for rent. My status quo, how do I do the work today? That's what I'm competing against. When I change, or I want to innovate, or I want to provide a new product, how am I going to get that consumer, my team, on board? Because I'm dealing with status quo. And so we need to take a minute and have that group learn the process, agree on the steps. We have to talk about what it might be. And so to do that creative tension, we need to start evaporating clouds. And what do I mean by that? Well, I have my view of the world. You have your view. Here are the facts and data. Usually we're missing it all over the place. So we need to get to that intersect point. So the first step of that is about having common definitions and a common language. There's an old movie series called Revenge of the Pink Panther. It became cartoons. Some of you might have seen that. There was an Inspector Clouseau, Peter Sellers. And he was bumbling and always would, kind of making a mess of things. And he goes into an innkeeper, and he says he needs a room. And he looks over while the innkeeper's getting, the paperwork and the keys. And he sees a dog, and he says to the innkeeper, and the innkeeper's looking the other way. He says, does your dog bite? And the innkeeper says, no, my dog doesn't bite. And then Peter Sellers leans over, Clouseau leans over to pet the dog, and you hear that, and he goes, oh, ouch. And he goes, I thought you said your dog did not bite. And the innkeeper says, it's not my dog. Right? So how many times have you been in that situation in your work and you say, it's not my dog, right? We have to get that common language. We have to evaporate the cloud. We need to take that time so we're all on the same page so we don't get bit by that dog. So that's a really critical part about accepting change also. I mean, you guys have inspections all the time, right? And it probably feels like you're being criticized. In industry, I call them audits. I can walk into a company very quickly, and I can start pointing out waste all over the place. I can free up half your floor space. I can get your product out of here twice as fast. I can guarantee that. Do you think I go in and tell them that? No. What I do is start with definitions, and then I give them a piece of paper, and I make a map. I take the CEO or the plant manager, and they have to follow around and draw a map. I just get the emergency exit plan off the wall, and I make them follow that map. You know what that map looks like? A plate of spaghetti. They drew it, and then we get done. I said, okay, what's our next step? And they go, we're going to change this. So already I have them in my camp. I've got them to that point. I make it their idea, not my own. So that has us moving to brains before money. 50% today is okay. Brains before money. So let's look at the alternatives. Can I get 80% of the function at 20% of the cost? I was working with Genie Industries over in Redmond, Washington. They make the scissor lifts. They were putting in a new scissor line. The engineers said, we need a $750,000 milling center. And we broke the work down, and we could do the functions for $5,000. They sold the machine, and we put in the new boring line. The next element is brains, or 50% today is okay. We hear the term a bird in the hand is worth more than two in the bush. That's like action today is worth more. Why? Because we learn from the activity. So just start doing it is the next element. Just go do it. Just get going. Planning in a conference room is great, but getting out on the shop floor or out with the customers, how they're using it is important in this process. So can we spend 20% of our time learning and 80% doing, taking this approach? The next thing is, look at all these sports teams. I mean, Gonzaga fans here, anybody, you know? Jimmy Kimmel's up next. So sports is a big dollar thing, right? And they have a scoreboard. Where's our scoreboard? Are we checking? We had an idea, we had a hypothesis, we think we can make this improvement. How did we measure it? Did we hit our target? Is it sustaining? Are we still doing it 30 days later, 60 days later? And reflect upon the process. Those are 3 checks we need to do as part of our scoreboard. Reflect upon the change process. What worked well? Did we have the right people? Did we have enough time? What was our program management like? Those kind of elements. And then the last part is our learning curve. We're in a very steep curve, and it gets steeper and steeper. And it's okay to fall, but we need to learn, adjust quickly, and repeat. So this is the element of scientific method, that we were using facts and data. We ran these tests. We checked what we were doing. We make adjustments. Now, we might have hit that target. And so in our adjustment is, how do we start moving it across our organization? We might have made a point improvement. Now, how do we link it to other areas? And then the next element is, we were slightly off. So how do we do a slight reframing? Did we get this problem statement correct? Maybe we have to go back and reframe that statement. And the third element is, it's time for a pivot. We missed the thing big time. We've got to turn. And most of the startups I work with, they're doing 2 or 3 pivots before they get some traction going. So thank you again for your time. Remember these 10 little steps and take them and go try them. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Our next speaker, I'm very pleased to announce him. He is a founder and CEO of Stay Vacation Rentals and Corporate Housing for the last 8 years. With over 2,000 units in 32 U.S. cities, a highly decorated former airborne ranger and captain in the U.S. Army, Mr. Allen realized and constructed a means for alternative accommodations while traveling the nation. He'll share how the military prepared and inspired him to develop his business, as well as the challenges he and other military members face when it comes to innovation. Please welcome Mr. Jordan Allen.
Thanks everybody for being here. This morning, this is the first time I've been on a military base since I got out in like 2011. And I got this overwhelming amount of stress that I forgot my PT belt. And it was like, I'm gonna be a shitty leader. Like, I can't lead people into combat. And I'm like, wait, I'm not in the military anymore. So I was pretty thankful for that. Yeah, I mean, I think that, really finding your passion levels is important. And you guys got to see a lot of instruction and a lot of really impressive speakers today. My goal is to kind of tell you like how I started a business, because I think a lot of people talk about all the fundamentals of it. They talk about all the academic world of starting a business, and I just kind of like to tell you how this all happened for me. So I grew up here in Spokane, Washington, went to West Valley High School. After high school, I was just way too cool for this town. It was time to move to the big city and see what the world is all about. So I moved to Portland, Oregon, went to Portland State, got to play football down there, had a lot of fun. The Seahawks never called, one because Russell Wilson took up all the salary cap, and number 2, I was like the 17th string defensive end, so I wasn't even really playing down there. So After that, decided to join the Army, so went down to Fort Sill, did Officer Basic, and just loved it. It was like such a new experience. Got to do the Airborne Ranger program, and that's kind of how this whole business got started. I was ended up getting deployed to Afghanistan. My younger brother ended up in Iraq, and you get your 2 weeks vacation. We're like, hey, why don't we coordinate this together? Do we want to go back to Spokane and see family and friends? And I think we decided like that's not a good idea. We're both young, single, saved up some money from combat, so decided to go down to Denver, Colorado, and watch some Colorado Rockies home opener baseball games. So we had like 4 or 5 guys that were joining us, and we started looking at hotels, and it was kind of expensive. We weren't going to be able to like stay together. And so somebody had mentioned, well, why don't you guys stay, like in a house or something like that? And it was like, this was before Airbnb had existed. Some of the other websites like VRBO, HomeAway were mainly like Vail, Colorado, and Destin, Florida. They weren't really city websites. So we went on Craigslist, and I sent this guy an email. It was like, I'll meet you out front with cash. I'm in the Army in Afghanistan, like every other Craigslist scam. But this was, this was 2010, so like the guy actually like booked the place off for me, and I ended up meeting him out front of the building with cash. So the plane lands down in Denver. Me and my brother are on it. End up getting a rental car. We go to Costco, get vodka, beer, chips, salsa, pizza, the whole thing. And we walk up we get to the building, and the guy's out there, and it's like, hey, here's your, $1,500 cash for like 4 nights. So he walks us into this building, and we go up. There's a swimming pool, fitness center. It was overlooking Coors Field. If you guys have ever been to Denver, it's right downtown. And we're in there, and like my brother's downstairs working out. We got a bunch of guys in the living room drinking beer, getting ready to go to the game. I'm like, this is it. This is like the future of travel. This is the greatest, experience I've ever had. We're all hanging out together. The pizza's in the oven, the fridges, or the beer's in the fridge instead of like the, bathtub in a hotel situation. And so, but I'm like, this is like a $800,000 condo. Like this guy can't be making any money. So the guy showed up, or the manager showed up later, and I go, how many of these do you have? And he goes, I got 5 of them in the building. I'm like, oh my gosh, you must be like so rich. This is like incredible. He goes, no man, these are just apartments, and I rent these. And being from Spokane, and then going to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and then going up to Anchorage, Alaska, I had never seen like a really nice, apartment building before that was kind of built to this like condo quality spec. So I went downstairs and talked to the leasing office. I'm like, hey, how much does a 2-bedroom, 2-bath go for? And they go, it's $1,400. And I go, oh my God, I just paid this guy's entire month's rent in like 4 days. I went and looked at his calendar online. He was booked out till October. I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. So ended up, good artists create, great artists steal. So ended up getting out of the Army, was living over in Tacoma, and I started looking around online at apartments to rent, and I found one downtown. And we started putting up like fake Craigslist ads, just like, the one that we saw for the guy downtown. And people started calling me and like giving me their credit card information. I'm like, holy shit, I need to sign a lease now. So I was like, hey, you still have that 2-bedroom, right? Yeah, okay. I'm like, I need to sign the lease on that because I've taken a bunch of people's money. So now I need to get the lease. And so it was time to furnish it. We didn't really have any money. It was like, $2,500 on our credit card. So we went to Walmart, got some sheets, went to like a storage unit off Craigslist, got some furniture. And I remember the first guest checked in, and our first review came back, and they're like, Jordan was such an incredible host. He showed us around Spokane, he told us about all the cool restaurants, but we haven't slept on sheets like that since we stayed in a third world country. So we had a lot of improvement to do. My wife now, but my girlfriend at the time, she was living in downtown Bellevue, and she met me at my apartment, and I was actually a townhouse, and I was living in this guy's basement. And she walks in and she sees like all of these yellow sticky notes with people's credit card information. I mean, just all over my bedroom. And she's like, is this like some kind of human trafficking thing? Like, what the hell is going on here? I'm like, no, the software is so slow that I have to like write people's credit card information down, and then I can put it in the software after the phone call's hanging up, because I don't want to take that long on the phone, because more people are calling and I need to get their credit card information. And so that's kind of how this whole thing, got started. And it's, I think a lot of people, when they think about businesses, you need to go put together this or go buy business plan software. You have to go put a 90-page business plan together. And I think that, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes you can do, because it's just not, it's like constantly roadblocks along the way that tell you that you can't do it. It's just better to start doing things. And I think if you can get $1 from somebody for your product, it's them voting, saying that they like your product or service. So we were getting a lot of votes. So kind of fast forward 5 years, we were doing about $25 million a year in revenue. We were across 12 cities, and it was time to okay, this isn't a side hustle anymore. I think this is like a real business now. We need to start figuring this out. And I think what we were really doing is we were kind of building an army with a mission to to provide this next level generation of hospitality experience. And we used a lot of the things that we learned in the military, like scale. How you pack your rucksack is exactly how we set up our units. The extra sheets and towels are in the master bedroom closet. That way, whether you're calling from Boston, New Orleans, Denver, no matter where you're at, our guest service agents can pick up the phone and say, hey, all your extra stuff is in the master bedroom closet. That's the only way you can scale, is to have that consistency. And nobody scales better than the military. It's the #1 scaling organization in the world. So it was like, this is a real business. We need to go raise some capital. So we went to US Bank. They told us to get the hell out of there. When you're growing really fast, you don't always show a lot of profit, because you're reinvesting your money back into your business. And they only want to give you loans if you have profit. And we didn't know what the word equity meant to go raise venture capital funds. This was, still kind of in the early days, particularly in Spokane. So I just started Googling, venture capital, and I met a few people, and they introduced me around to a few other people, just like you'd Google, the nearest pizza place, or where should I go get breakfast in Spokane. So started making some phone calls, and after my third phone call, this guy's like, well, why don't you fly over here to Seattle? So I flew to Seattle. This really scary British guy sat across the table from me. I told him about the business, kind of like I'm telling you guys right now. And he didn't crack a smile. He just stared at me. It was really awkward. And it lasted about 2 hours. I was starting to sweat. It was January. And so it was, I left the office, and the guy I was with, I'm like, gosh, that didn't go very well, did it? He goes, no, man, that went really good. Did you see the corner of his mouth kind of went up a little bit? So the next week, him and his team flew over to Spokane and wrote us a $15 million check. And it was, pretty exciting for us. It was really time for us to scale to the next level. Their family runs an $18 billion family office. I didn't know this at the time. I should have, because it was the top office of the top building in Seattle. Should have known they had a little bit of money. And we continued to grow. And now, I think I got my slides on here. Now we're in, close to 32 cities. We've got a little over 2,500 properties. We've got 250 employees. We're on track to do about $130 million in revenue this year, and should do about $250 next year. This is not the furniture from the storage unit on East Sprague. This is one of our properties we just set up in Columbus. Is anybody here from Columbus? No? Maybe? So Columbus has the Zippity Doodah Festival, so now we brand stuff to make it feel like it's kind of local market. Columbus is also the fast food restaurant testing center of the world. So we put eat your veggies on the pillow. Jack Hanna is from Columbus. He probably wouldn't appreciate this, but we put a zebra print rug down there. And then this is kind of, again, just what we've evolved to do. And I think if we put a business plan together, I might be managing trailer parks or campgrounds and bringing dynamic pricing to all kinds of stuff. We had no idea what we were doing. And I think what we did is we learned and evolved along the way. And so now we operate upscale travel apartments. And what that means is we go downtown to the best locations, find the best buildings, and operate a consistent guest experience, from city to city. And again, back to that military kind of training, having that consistent guest experience is how you scale. If every single thing you do is a one-off piece of art, it's really hard to kind of reproduce that over and over. Airbnb, you guys have probably stayed in Airbnb before. It's been around for about 10 years. A lot of people, when they think of Airbnb, it's the stinky kid with the backpack going to stay in a dorm room. and it's evolved. The company's now worth about $35 billion, and there's a lot of new kind of niche business segments within that, and we're one of those that's really combining like the best of a vacation rental and the best of a hotel, and it's just a really fun, kind of exciting, industry to be a part of. Where it's like if Marriott and Airbnb were to have a baby, that's kind of what the Stay Alfred concept is. So this is just kind of a highlight overview of our business. We've got 32 cities. We're in 100 plus properties with over 2,200 units. And you can see all the cities that we're in and continue to expand. We're actually looking to expand it over to Europe. We're looking to buy a company in Prague and Berlin right now, and it's fascinating because the company from Prague, they don't have their information together. Nothing's like in Excel spreadsheets. We're having to like manually hand jam everything. They're really difficult to negotiate against. And then we talked to the company from Berlin. It's like you'll execute the NDA. We'll set up a Dropbox folder. You'll have the leases translated in English, and it's like no wonder that the Germans took over Prague in like 4 hours without firing a bullet. So you get to see like how you scale. The Germans have kind of figured that part out. So again, kind of our business model of what we do is like we go find apartments. You go on apartments.com, you send people out to cities, they run around, and we go lease and furnish them. We're actually like manufacturing our own furniture now in North Carolina. So when you go to that hotel and feel that like 500-pound chair, and you're like, where the hell did they buy this stuff? Like, you don't buy it, you have it made. So we're making a lot of our own furniture. And then once that's up and furnished, we start making reservations. We advertise all over the web. And then finally, the guests check in, have an amazing experience, and check out. Technology and disruption is the biggest aspect of our business. We're here in Spokane, being able to operate. We're going to have about 1 million guests this year check in with us. So to be able to communicate, to be able to get guests in their rooms with smart lock technology, using their phones. Not every cell phone is the same. Like some of them don't have the NFC technology, like the iPhone 6 is for you to even use a smart lock. The guy that's coming over from China may not have Wi-Fi service. So, even though there's all this like innovation in technology, sometimes that like 2,000-year-old lock box where you punch in a code like gets people in every time. So we do revert back to stuff like that sometimes. This is one of our buildings in Nashville. If you guys haven't been to Nashville, please go. It's one of the coolest happening cities in the United States right now. Home of country music, but it's evolved much more than that. But this is one of our properties that we've signed. We've got 10 floors in this building, so it's 140 units. And it's just a completely different hotel experience. You walk in, there's not really a lobby, but then you go back and it's got a rooftop pool that's kind of Las Vegas style, and just a great experience, especially if you're traveling with family and friends. Shows a few other partners that we're working with. Yes, I'm doing a shameless business plug right now. Just some of the things that we're doing from technology, like in the vacation rental world, nobody has a loyalty program. So you stay with us, 10 nights, we average the number of nights and you get a free discount. We stole this from Expedia and Hotels.com because they had such an amazing loyalty program. Again, great artist steal. But we have about 25 software engineers that constantly are just figuring out new technologies that are out there. How do we implement them for our business? To be at the cutting edge. Really, it's just, hey, labor costs are getting really expensive, and to have 50 people running around a city versus having an app on your phone that can do pretty much the same thing really allows us to scale and reduce costs. Next slide. Just wanted to show you guys some of the technologies we use. There's probably about 50 more of these on here, but it lets you know like the interconnected, just how much we focus on technology, trying to bring it all together under one like tech stack. It's nothing short of brain damage to do this. Like, just think of the military trying to get programs to talk to each other. Like, we're maybe a little bit further along than that in some regards, but it's a lot. And this is kind of what I wanted to talk about for the majority of the rest of my time. I've got about 4 minutes left. Vision, mission, values. Like, when we first started, we didn't have values. Like, I got out of the Army, and it was like, okay, like sales and like high performers, like that's what being a business is about. And then we hired Ross Culverhouse, and Ross Culverhouse was selling 3 times more than anybody else. That's his real name, by the way. Can't stand the guy, so I'm gonna talk about him. People were like, "Hey Jordan, that Ross guy, like, I think he's sleeping in the office." I go, "You guys, he's selling 3 times more than anybody else. It doesn't really matter." And people were like, "Hey, Jordan," I think he's maybe like doing drugs in the office. I'm like, "You guys, he's selling 3 times more than anybody else." And they're like, "Hey, he's kind of harassing like the girls in the office." I'm like, "Yeah, but you know, he's selling 3 times more than anybody else." So Ross went in, ripped up his employment agreement, like took all of our contracts, went down to Miami, and then started competing with us 3 days later. And this was kind of the point where it's like, oh my gosh, like people were telling me about this. I wasn't being maybe humble enough to like listen to what people were saying, and I'm not going to do that again. So we ended up figuring out what our core values are. This is how we hire, train, promote. If you're like the most talented person in the world, but you don't fit our core values, you won't be a part of our organization. So we got the 6 H's. We have happy. We're selling vacation rentals, so if you're not happy, you're like, "Oh, I hate my wife, I hate my kids," like get the hell out of here. Like this is, like you need to match people's like level of excitement. Humble's probably like the biggest piece. Again, we're in a really fast growing industry, and like don't hire know-it-alls and assholes. That's kind of like our philosophy. And, you know, probably one of my biggest takeaways on this is, you know, the biggest probably mistake of my life was when I was in Iraq and there was this new radio that came out and I was like, you know, second lieutenant, and like, they're like, "Hey sir, do you know how to use this?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, I definitely know how to use it," because I didn't want to, you know, seem like I didn't know what I was doing. And then we got out in combat and, you know, we ended up getting in a firefight, and it's like, holy shit, like I could have killed everybody in my unit by not having radios to talk to aircraft. Like I'll never do that again. And it's just those like things where, you know, I think the Army culture or military culture has a long way to go on that. You know, forgetting your PT belt and like really making sure, like show me how to, you know, to use this, and kind of digging in a few extra steps. And that's kind of the philosophy that we've taken in our business now is, you know, if you're not a humble person that's willing to listen to feedback, including myself, you're just not going to be a part of the team. Honest, like obviously, you know, telling the truth is important, but it's more about being kind of genuine and being your real self. I think the sincerity thing is critical for this. We had hardworking up there originally, but we had a lot of people that were fitting all these values and they were working really, really hard. They just weren't getting the job done. So we're starting to let people go that were fitting our values, and it's like, okay, we might have to take a look at our values again because this doesn't seem to be working. Hungry, like, you know, I think the concept of groupthink is a negative word in most organizations, but when you're in the startup world, you need everybody in your organization drinking the company Kool-Aid, doing a keg stand with the company Kool-Aid, like believing in it, because it's so hard, and if you don't have that shared vision and mission with your entire group, it's just too easy to quit. Every day is like, it seems like the world's coming to an end, and then it's just like highs and lows all the time. And then loyal, like, you know, hey, take care of the company. Yeah, I couldn't figure out an H word, so we just threw H in front of loyal. Should have explained that. Yeah, we got to. So this is, you know, this is one of those things, like if you're going to go leave our company to go make an extra buck somewhere else, like you're kind of leaving for the wrong reason. So why are you part of the organization? It's because you believe in the vision and mission. You're going to go through, you're going to lose 30% of your brain power over the next 5 years working for us. So, you know, we're going to take care of you. So we're really big at promoting people from within. We really do encourage ideas. I think it's like, hey, is this going to screw up the business? Okay, then just go do it. Like we kind of don't put a lot of planning and processes in place. It's kind of go do it, learn quickly and fail. So that's all I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed some of that. Hopefully you got some nuggets. And what am I doing next? Walking off stage? Okay.
Thank you, sir. That was awesome. So we got a 10-minute break right now,